out the motherfucking pack.
Right out
But
the
niggas don't know
best.
how to act.
Hello, and welcome back to yet another NFL video. This shit took so goddamn long, man. I am really looking forward to getting to videos that don't take 10 hours to put together. But nonetheless, complaining out the way, we have the second part to the free agency grades. This is all of the major free agency moves that took place in the AFC, because there were a lot of them. And man, let's get right into it. A lot of league altering shit right here. And let's start off with the team that possibly had the best free agency in the entire conference, and that's the Steelers, man. Where do I even begin? They made a lot of big moves here. Let's just start with the Russell Wilson signing. This was the best signing any team made. I say that confidently. The reason I say that is they got a starting NFL quarterback, a guy who is probably, this may sound a little crazy, but recency bias aside, a guy who's probably going to be a Hall of Famer. They got that guy for $1 million. There are going to be third round picks in the NFL this year that won't even play, that will make more money than Russell Wilson next season. Think about that for a second. That's insanity. That's how cheap the Steelers got a starting quarterback for. Then, the best trade made by any team this season was Justin Fields for a sixth round pick. The Steelers got a young starting caliber. He could win the job. He could possibly just win the job over Russell Wilson. They got a young guy who with potential to the roof for a sixth round, a quarterback for a sixth round pick. Are you kidding me? That's insane. That it's just it's an amazing move. The two best transactions that involved quarterback, whether it was a signing or a trade or whatever, was both made by the Steelers. It's outstanding. I'm almost speechless when thinking about those two moves. And on top of that, you got Patrick Queen just straight up stealing him from your division rivals. And I'm pretty sure he was an All Pro last year. If he wasn't an All Pro, he was a Pro Bowler, and I'm pretty sure he was All Pro second team. So you get an All Pro linebacker, just adding him to your defense. There also was the Dante Jackson, Deontay Johnson trade. Honestly, I feel like they might have lost that one a little bit. I'm not a fan of trading away a dependable, reliable receiver. Uh, I do actually now I think that receiver is low key kind of a need for them. I know they got guys like Calvin Austin. I know they have a really good group of tight ends and running backs, but I don't really like the trade. I feel like if you're going to move Deontay Johnson, you could have got maybe a third or a fourth round pick back. And I Dante Jackson, there's nothing wrong with trading him for a cornerback because cornerback was a need and now it's probably not as much. But getting Dante Jackson, I think he is not that good, to be honest, when you take a deeper look at his stats. So I don't love that move for the Steelers, but I understand it. They get Deshaun Elliott from the Dolphins. He will be a starter, most likely, with the loss of guys like Keanu Neal. Quez Watkins, smaller deal, and Cordero Patterson. This is very interesting. If I just want to see Cordero Patterson on the field, man. He is such a versatile weapon, and also with the new kick return rules, this guy's going to make some explosive plays next year. And talking about the guys they lost, nothing really too severe. Allen Robinson wasn't doing anything. Keanu Neal was hurt. Okorofor was ass. Only thing I don't like, Patrick Peterson. I know he did not have a great season last year, but I would have liked to see them give him another chance. You know, maybe they were paying him a lot, and it saved you money. Maybe you can still bring him back. Who knows? But I don't like the Deontay Johnson trade and in releasing Patrick Peterson. But let's take a look at the guys they brought in. There's Russ, what he did, and for the quarterbacks, these are rushing and passing numbers combined. So there's Russ's stats compared to Justin Fields' stats. Now, Justin Field played less games than Russ, but I do think that Russ is going to end up winning the starting job, play for a year in Pittsburgh, kind of redeem his name, if you will, and then he'll go to another team next year, probably get a lot more than $1 million, and Justin Fields will take over. I think that's the ideal situation from the Steelers' perspective. You can look at their Patrick Queen, monster season last year. I love that signing for Pittsburgh. Gives them a real dog in their middle linebacker position, the best they've had in who knows how long, since Shazier really. Dante Jackson, 107 passer rating allowed is not good, but maybe it was just because he was having to play a lot of CB1 last year on a bad team in Carolina. Maybe he's more of a CB2. Maybe, uh, is it Jonte Porter? Maybe or Joey Porter plays that CB1 role. Dante Jackson moves over. I'm not really sure, but I do like the Deshaun Elliott pickup as well. Overall, it was a great offseason for Pittsburgh. They solved their quarterback problem while also making several key additions on defense. I'm going to give them an A. I nitpicked at a couple things. I couldn't give it an A plus, but to make the two single most important and significant moves at quarterback is amazing, and you have to get an A solely off of that. I don't care if they did nothing else all free agency. If they just based off the Russell Wilson and Justin Fields acquisitions, I would have given them an A regardless. Next up, we got their rivals, the Ravens. This looks a goddamn a lot like the fucking Cowboys shit from the last video because man, they had no problem letting everybody walk, man. Now, J.K. Dobbins is not officially gone. Odell's not officially gone, but I'm pretty sure that they will not be returning. And look, they lost a lot of guys, a lot of important guys. Kevin Zeitler, Pro Bowler. Clowney, great season. Geno Stone should have been a Pro Bowler, great season. Patrick Queen, All Pro. Morgan Moses, starter. Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins. That's your two best running backs. So it's going to be incredibly hard to replace all of that. But man, Derrick Henry. I just got chills when I just said that just now. Derrick Henry on the Ravens. He had his choice. He could have gone anywhere. He chose to go to Baltimore because I just got another set of chills talking two. That's crazy. But Derrick Henry in Baltimore changes everything. You can afford to lose J.K. and Gus Edwards, right? If you bring in Derrick Henry, he is probably going to take over both of their production. And if they feed him like they should feed him, if head coach or offensive coordinator, sorry, forget bro's name off the top of my head, former Georgia OC, if he knows how to use Derrick Henry, man, it's going to be extremely dangerous. He needs man, they got to be the number one rushing offense next season because of this move, right? Lamar, Derrick Henry. Don't forget Keaton Mitchell now either. Don't know if they're going to bring back Justice Hill. Maybe he's already on the roster, but man, I love the Ravens getting back to their roots of being the best running team in football. I think that's what they're going to do next season. I do not like, though, how they kind of sold everything just for this move. I mean, the amount of talent they lost is way more than just bringing Derrick Henry, right? Because look at the defense, man. You lost your DC. I'm not going to hold that against them. They really can't control that. But Jadeveon Clowney, outside of Matabuke, led the team in sacks. Geno Stone led the team in picks. Patrick Queen probably led the team in tackles. Like, you're losing amazing players in your secondary, linebacker, and defensive line. You're losing depth in Tyus Bowser and Ronald Darby. I really don't like the fact that they just let all these guys walk. And it's not like Geno Stone's not making that much money. They could have brought him back fairly easily. Patrick Queen, 14 mil a year for an All-Pro. I know you got Roquan Smith already, but man, maybe they drafted Trevor Simpson, or is that his name? They drafted Simpson from Clemson a year ago, so maybe they were already planning to let Patrick Queen walk. But man, I don't know. They lost a lot of talent, and that kind of hurts when I think about it. But here's Derrick Henry though, and the best thing you could say about him: look at those bottom stats down there. The top is what he did last season. Yeah, he was good last season, but he's missed one game the last 2 years for a running back. Incredibly durable, 0 fumbles. This is a guy that he is the only guy in the NFL right now that I honestly feel confident in saying he's going to make the Hall of Fame as a running back. Nick Chubb was getting there, but unfortunately a massive injury. But it's like Derrick Henry, he feels like an older era running back. He feels like a Walter Payton, a Barry Sanders, a Emmitt Smith, a Eric Dickerson. He feels like one of those guys playing in the league today. It's just the stuff he does is kind of just it's different. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I hold it in such high regard, him going to the Ravens. It does, you can afford to just sign Derrick Henry in a way, but still, with that being said, they lost a lot of talent, man. If they signed anybody besides Derrick Henry, I'm probably giving them a C minus, a D plus, a D. But when you add King Henry, it makes up for a lot of bad decisions. Notably, trading away Morgan Moses to the Jets for a sixth round pick. That's an awful move, in my opinion. I don't care if you have to clear up cap space. They have crippled themselves at offensive line. They have multiple holes that they need to fill in that offensive line. I know they got Andrew Voorhees, I believe, coming back from injury. Maybe he takes up a spot at guard, but they're missing both tackles now, I think. Like they're down a lot of spots. And I don't know how you fill that all just with the draft. I don't think you can. So I do think this team is going to take a hit next season. Next, we got the Browns. Uh, Look, I don't. They didn't make a lot of moves, right? You look at their losses, not much. They just lost a couple linebackers, Joe Flacco, obviously. But they brought in Jameis, brought in Devin Bush and Jordan Hicks to replace the linebackers they lost. Those were a couple of good signings. And then it's a couple of depth pieces, right? Quentin Jefferson from the Jets is a really good acquisition. I like Dante Foreman as well, from the Bears. He had a really good season in Carolina 2 years ago. And Jerry Jeudy was like their big splash move, right? I like the acquisition. I like the trade. I don't love the immediate extension. I forgot what the exact number was. I believe it was like 17 million a year. I think a good amount of that is incentive based. I don't think his actual cap hit's going to be 17 million, but man, to pay a guy in Jerry Jeudy who has been so inconsistent, and I understand he's had like what 12 quarterbacks since he's been in Denver, but it's like, man, I would not have paid Jerry Jeudy without him playing a game. You know what I'm saying? Like I got to see how he looks first. So they're banking on Jerry Jeudy just being a perfect fit in their system. But I'll say this, man. Jerry Jeudy, Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, David Njoku, Cedric Tillman, David Bell, like they're stacked. They're weapons. And then healthy Nick Chubb, possibly Jerome Ford, Dante Foreman, they're stacked, right? So they have set themselves up to just basically say that as long as Deshaun gives us anything, if he get all Deshaun has to do is be better than Joe Flacco was. And look, Joe was solid, very solid. But man, it's going to be hard for the Browns not to be great next season, man. Taking a closer look at some of these guys, obviously Jerry Jeudy had his highs and lows last season for sure. Jordan Hicks is a really underrated pickup. I forgot where he played actually. Was it the Vikings maybe? Believe it was the Vikings, but he had a solid season last year. Quentin Jefferson, 6 sacks as an interior defensive lineman, 13 QB hits, and look at the snaps played. He was a rotational defensive lineman. I believe he was on the Jets. 6 sacks, 13 QB hits. That's incredibly impressive. That could turn out to be a really underrated signing if he has like 4.5 sacks next season. Like that'll be pretty valuable for them. And then obviously Dante Foreman, only 9 games, but at over 500 total yards. So I like their moves. They have a good roster already, so you wouldn't expect them to be out here making a bunch of signings, but they still did what they had to do to improve their roster. So I gave them a B. If they just wouldn't have extended Jerry Jeudy without him playing a game, I probably would have given them a B plus, but that is a negative in my opinion, a bad decision for Cleveland. Next up, we got the Bengals. The Bengals are making a lot of changes. Obviously, the T. Higgins situation is not resolved. That will play a big role in their grade, but I couldn't just wait for the Bengals to trade T. Higgins. They lost some really established players who have been there for a while. Jonah Williams been there starting for like 4 years. DJ Reader, starting defensive tackle. Joe Mixon has been a staple for this team for so long. I did not like that move, man. I feel like he could have figured out a way to rework his contract or something. And Chidobe Awuzie, he's been there for a while as well, but he kind of took a step back last season. Looking at the guys they brought in, I really, really like the Geno Stone signing. Again, taking him away from your division rival, you know, that's killing two birds in one stone, improving your team while hurting your rival. I like that move a lot. Also, very affordable. I thought Geno Stone was going to get paid a lot more. I wanted my Seahawks to get him, for example. That's a really good signing. Zach Moss. This may sound a little crazy, but when we get into Zach Moss's stats, you'll see. I feel like he could, not saying he's Joe Mixon, right? Joe Mixon is a Pro Bowler. He's a very, very good player. But Zach Moss to replace Joe Mixon in more of a running back by committee style, I like that signing. That's a really good sign. If you're gonna cut Joe Mixon, bring in Zach Moss. I like it. Um, Guys like Mike Gesicki to replace Irv Smith. Irv Smith didn't do much, so hopefully Mike Gesicki is just a straight up upgrade. Sheldon Rankins from Houston to replace DJ Reader. Okay. Von Bell. Von Bell took a year off to go play in Carolina, now returns to Cincinnati where he was so good. I really like that pickup for them. They just improved their secondary a whole lot with that. And then Trent Brown to replace Jonah Williams. I'm sure he's making a lot less. I think Jonah Williams is making like $15 million a season in Arizona now. So to bring in Trent Brown for $4 million a season, they made some good moves. They saved a lot of money, I'm sure. So I'm sure they were tight on cap space. So a lot of these cuts and trades were necessary. But I feel like they navigated that pretty well. You look at some of these guys, right? Geno Stone obviously led the league in interceptions last season. Just great stats. He's a big pickup, like I said. Take a look at Von Bell down there. Let's stay with the secondary for now. 0 touchdowns allowed in the last 2 years is incredibly impressive as a DB. And we know what he did when he was in Cincinnati. He was a part of that defense that helped them get to the Super Bowl. Sheldon Rankins last season, 6 sacks and under 600 snaps. If basically as a defensive lineman for me, especially like I always talk about how it's harder for interior defensive linemen to get pressure, and that's true. If you can get a sack per every 100 snaps, that's kind of the quota I'm looking for, right? And if you do more than that, that's impressive. Sheldon Rankins did more than that. Also, bringing in the 9 TFLs. Trent Brown, look at his PFF grades. The only thing holding him back has been his injury history in New England. So that's what they're trying to navigate in Cincinnati now. But the PFF grades are there. He is a very good tackle. Probably an upgrade over Jonah Williams, to be honest. And look at Zach Moss, man. Only 14 games, and not even in those 14 games, several games, he played the very, very big backup to Jonathan Taylor. So when he got the opportunity last year, he balled out in Indianapolis, 210 touches, almost 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns. I'm not saying he's just going to come in and get 300, 290, 280 touches in Cincinnati. I think it is going to be running back by committee along with Chase Brown, formerly of Illinois. I think I would love to see Chase Brown get an extra 30 or 40 carries next season. I think that's in the Cincinnati's plans. But between Zach Moss and Chase Brown, I do think they will be able to at least somewhat replicate Joe Mixon's production. But yeah, man, taking a closer look at these signings, I gave them a B plus. You know, at first I looked at the Joe Mixon sign or trade. I looked at them getting rid of a Awuzie, and I'm like, I'm not so sure about this. But to get cheaper and possibly get better, you know, Geno Stone and Von Bell, those are really good moves, man, for their secondary. Um, DJ Reader, you lost him. You bring in Sheldon Rankins. That's a really good move. Zach Moss, I like that move. Trent Brown, all of these moves right here, I think are really, really good. So I'm sticking with that B plus. I think it was a very, very good offseason for Cincinnati. So you look here at the AFC North, this is going to be one of the best we see for any division. Obviously, the Steelers balled out. Bengals, very strong though. Browns still finding ways to improve their roster with limited resources. And the Ravens, they lost the most. They definitely lost the most. I mean, and to their rivals, they lost Patrick Queen to the Steelers. They lost Geno Stone to the Bengals. So those will be some interesting storylines to keep track of there. Next, we got the Dolphins. Dolphins made a lot of moves, man. And let's start with what they lost because the Dolphins lost so many productive players and starters. Let's take a look down the starters, right? Christian Wilkins, best defensive player, arguably, starter. Xavier Howard, best player in your secondary, arguably, along with Jalen Ramsey, starter, longtime starter. Jerome Baker, longtime starter. Robert Hunt, longtime starter. Emmanuel Ogba, productive role-playing linebacker. Deshaun Elliott, starting in the safety. Andrew Van Ginkel, starter, incredibly productive season. Brandon Jones, incredibly productive role player. Like, these are a lot of players to lose, man. But, man, and I don't like them letting Christian Wilkins walk. I don't like them cutting Xavier Howard. But I guess you could make the argument that some of this was necessary. They were tight on money. Taking a look at the guys they brought in, they tried to do what the Bengals did and just replace guys that are, that are cheaper, maybe a little older. Bring in Jordan Brooks for Jerome Baker. I do like that move. Bringing in Aaron Brewer from Tennessee to replace Robert Hunt possibly. I'm not so sure about that. Bring in Shaq Barrett to replace, Emmanuel Ogba, Jordan Poyer at safety. I like that move. That was one of their better signings. Kendall Fuller to replace Xavier Howard. I think they are going to live to regret that move, definitely. Taking a closer look at their signings. Jordan Brooks from my Seahawks, he's a very good player, man. I'm hurt that we let him go. So the Dolphins are getting a good one there. Jonnu Smith from the Falcons. This could possibly be a very big change to their offense. Notably, last season they didn't really include the tight ends a lot, but to get a guy like Jonnu Smith in there, we might see him make a really big impact for them next year. Uh, Aaron Brewer, like I said, a starter for Tennessee the last 2 years. Shaq Barrett had a down year last season, but unfortunately he did go through the loss of his child, so that might have played a big part in that. If he could turn it around in Miami, that would be huge for them. Jordan Poyer was an all-pro like 2 seasons ago. Not his best season last year, but to take away from division rival, if nothing else, that helps. And Kendall Fuller, man, 9 touchdowns allowed, 120.4. I was seeing a bunch of Commanders fans in the comments being like, y'all got a good one, man. Take care of him. I don't know why. Kendall Fuller has not been good the last 2 seasons. He's allowed like 17 or 16 touchdowns, man. I don't know why we're acting like Kendall Fuller is some all pro that's leaving the Commanders. That is a massive downgrade at cornerback from Xavier Howard to Kendall Fuller. So I feel like the Dolphins, they're trying to do what the Bengals did, just get cheaper, get a little bit older, if you will, and to stop the bleeding of all the losses you had. But I don't think they did as good of a job, nearly as good of a job. You let a lot of talent out the door, and I don't feel like the guys you brought in come even close to replacing them. So I gave the Dolphins a B minus. They tried. I'll give them that. They weathered the storm, if you want to put it that way, but they'd still got significantly worse talent wise, which does not help their chances in the AFC. The Jets, however, the Jets are going all in. You can tell. They probably think this is Aaron's last year. And if that's the case, they are going to go out swinging because the guys they brought in these are some heavy hitters, man. Starting off with who they lost, though, Bryce Huff hurts. He had a breakout season last year. He was great for them. But Hassan Reddick, it's basically just a trade. Bryce Huff and a second for Hassan Reddick. That's a good move. Quentin Jefferson, like I said, that one hurts, but you're bringing guys like Javon Kinlaw and Leaky Futsu, so maybe you could say that kind of evens out. Jordan Whitehead, he was pretty good. I think that is their biggest loss they have yet to replace in the secondary. Laken Tomlinson, he was a starter, but he wasn't as good for them, so that doesn't really hurt. But looking at the guys they brought in, man, Hassan Reddick, all pro. Hassan Reddick has gotten 10 plus sacks everywhere he's been, whether it's Carolina, Arizona, and most recently being a dominant player in Philadelphia. That is an amazing pickup to get him. Pair him up with guys like Quinnen Williams, Jermaine Johnson. Like he could turn, he's already a star, I would say. He's one of the premier pass rushers at outside linebacker, but he could even, it's scary to think of him taking it to another level, but he could now with Robert Saleh in this Jets defense. Tyron Smith, this is their biggest all-in move, I'd say, because Tyron Smith, it's a gamble. He has been hurt consistently for the last several years, but if he can stay healthy, you're not going to get a better left tackle to protect Aaron Rodgers, right? Mike Williams, they knew that they needed more help at receiver, and they got it, man. Like I said, with Tyron Smith, injury concerns, injury history, but when he's out there, he's a good player. And Aaron Rodgers, I'm sure, would love to have him. Bringing in multiple additions on this offensive line, both from the Ravens, by the way. John Simpson to play guard and Morgan Moses to play right tackle. The Jets made a concerted effort to improve their offensive line, and I respect that. Taking a closer look at it, Hassan Reddick, we know what he's done. He has not missed a game the last 2 seasons. Dominant pass rusher. Tyron Smith, he did play 13 games last season, and obviously we know how good he is, great as one of the best tackles in all of football. Mike Williams did not play much last season. I had to go to 2022. And look, only 13 games, almost 900 yards. We know how much of a deep threat he is. John Simpson, not graded too highly, but for some reason, most offensive guards are just not graded highly at all on PFF. So 56.5, that's not too bad of a grade. And it's also an upgrade, by the way, over Lake and Tomlinson. Javon Kinlaw, not as good, I'd say, as Quentin Jefferson. But keep in mind, Javon Kinlaw, formerly of the 49ers, along with Robert Saleh, and Solomon Thomas was another guy who kind of just didn't pan out in San Fran. But since he went to the Jets, Solomon Thomas had a career breakout year along with Robert Saleh. So I think Javon Kinlaw could be one of those guys where, given a little bit more opportunity, he could kind of emerge and get a little bit better. Morgan Moses also. Look at Morgan Moses down there. Very highly graded as a potential right tackle. Like that's if you look at the Jets offensive line now, Joe Tippmann at center, Elijah Vera Tucker and John Simpson at the guards, and Morgan Moses and Tyron Smith at tackle. We're looking at just a straight up good offensive line now. You bring in Mike Williams, a healthy Breece Hall. We're talking about a just a dominant offense potentially. You know, all of it's on paper right now. We have not seen any of these guys play together, but man, the Jets did their job. They went all in. I have to give it an A. Credit where credit is due. They did what all these teams who say they're contending, say they're competing, they want to win. The Jets put their money where their mouth is, and I got to respect that. Aaron's last year, potentially, you gave him what he's looking for. The opposite end of the spectrum, though. We got a team now who is just letting all their players walk, and the guys they brought in do not stop the bleeding. The Bills have had one of the worst off seasons, in my opinion. Let me break down why. So many established veterans and starters unnecessarily crippling yourself at certain positions. I do not like this offseason for the Bills. So let's just go down the list. Leonard Floyd, you let him walk in free agency. I can understand that one. You probably don't have the money to pay him $10 million a season because that's what the Niners paid him. That's kind of understandable. A cap casualty, if you will. But he was a great player. Might have even led this team in sacks last season. I'm not sure. He had double-digit sacks. That hurts significantly. Gabe Davis, he's a role player, but he's one of the best role players in the NFL. And to let him walk, I'm sure that hurts. I don't know how you're going to be able to replace him. You know, maybe just Khalil Shakir, you hope, can produce what he did last season, but that's going to hurt nonetheless. Tre'Davious White, this one's more just disappointing, if anything. He has been injury prone his entire career. So I understand this one, but still losing the potential of having all pro Tre'Davious White on the Bills again, that stings a little bit. Ryan Bates and Mitch Morse, getting rid of these guys hurts your offensive line depth. It creates an unnecessary hole at center now that you have to fill. So I don't like these moves at all. Dane Jackson, depth at cornerback that you didn't have already. I don't like letting him walk. Tyrell Dodson, you lose Tremaine Edmonds last season. Now you lose Tyrell Dodson. Linebacker becomes an issue. And Stephon Diggs, man, this is one of the worst moves. It simply is. I understand that the chemistry was not there with Josh Allen anymore, but Stephon Diggs has been on a Hall of Fame run with the Bills statistically these last 4 seasons. And a lot of people point to his stats the last 7 games. He didn't do much, but they fired their offensive coordinator. And are you trying to tell me every year since Stephon Diggs has been there, the Bills have won 10 games? In the 4 years Stephon Diggs have been there, the Bills have won several playoff games. The quality of the Bills franchise since before he got there to since he's been there has changed dramatically. So to try and blame it on him for some reason that he has just not that he's like the reason he's what's holding them back. I don't get it. I don't buy that argument. Also, the Bills are undefeated in the playoffs when he has 100-yard games. So when they get him the ball in the playoffs, they win. He dropped that pass against the Chiefs. I give you that. That wasn't his best moment. But this sets the Bills back. This offseason takes the Bills off the list of contenders for me. You lost too many talented, productive starters, in my opinion. You cannot replace these guys. They've chosen not to replace these guys. They have no money. They have so much tied up in Josh Allen and Von Miller. And where is it now? Where are your all pros? Where are your Pro Bowlers? They can't compete. They already couldn't compete with the Chiefs, but now even in your own division, I think they're the third best. I think the Jets and the Dolphins are going to surpass them. I don't think they're winning 10 games next season. Let's look at the guys they brought in. It's not enough. Nicholas Morrow to replace Tyrell Dodson, I'll give you that. I think Nicholas Morrow is a solid role playing linebacker. He'll be the second to Matt Milano. I'm not mad at that. Curtis Samuel, if you want to replace Gabe Davis, okay. If they can get Curtis Samuel 60 catches and 30 runs, I think he could put together possibly 1,000-yard season. That would be the best case scenario, right? But I'm clutching at straws here. Casey Toohill from the Commanders, okay? Okay. Hello, hello. My bad. You knew the mic was gonna die at some point. Where were we at? Casey Toohill. Casey Toohill does not in any way replace Leonard Floyd. If anything, he's a depth piece, but it's a good pickup. But man, I have to give the Bills a D. They crippled their own chances at contending this season. You have, by all accounts, a top five quarterback in football in Josh Allen, and you have taken away his weapons, his two best receivers. You took them away. You crippled this defense with several losses, and I don't think that they're contenders next year because of how bad this offseason has been so far. You could probably fill one or two holes in the draft, maybe, but the Stephon Diggs trade, you didn't even get back a second rounder this year. You got a 2025 second rounder. You took away the Bills. They gave away their best offensive weapon, possibly the second best player on this entire team. You gave him away, and in return, sorry, you gave him and I believe a fifth and a sixth round pick. You gave all of that away, and you don't get anything back that can help you this season unless they trade that second round pick and they move up to get like Brian Thomas or something. They get nothing in return next season for Stephon Diggs, and they didn't have to move him. I think this offseason has been horrible for the Bills. I can't stress that enough. Arguably the worst in the entire NFL. Next up, we got the Patriots. I don't like the Patriots offseason either. I think all of their signings are not on the caliber that they need. I think guys like Taki is good. I think KJ Osborne is a solid wide receiver 3. I think Antonio Gibson is a solid wide receiver 2. But look at the guys they lost. They lost their starting offensive tackle, Trent Brown. They lost multiple starting DBs, Jalen Mills, Miles Bryant, J.C. Jackson. I'm not saying any of those guys are necessarily really good, but letting 3 DBs walk and not bringing in any to replace them is not a good idea, in my opinion. Um, Devontae Parker is not very good. I don't mind you letting him walk. Zeke was somehow their best running back last season because Ramondre Stevenson got hurt. So, but not bringing him back was a good decision. The Patriots sucked last season. Their roster is not very talented. So a lot of these guys, it doesn't really hurt to lose them. I think they upgraded at linebacker. I think they probably upgraded with Antonio Gibson over Zeke. I think KJ Osborne over uh, Devontae Parker is probably an upgrade. But the Patriots, like I said, as one of the worst rosters, I feel like they had to think about all the work, for example, that the Commanders and Panthers did, right? The Commanders and Panthers and the Patriots were the worst 3 teams, right? The amount of work that the Panthers and Commanders did stomps all over the work that the Patriots did, right? The Patriots, these moves really don't help them at all, in my opinion. You know, maybe you get some type of production out of Gibson, but is it more than Zeke's? I'm not sure. Taki probably better than Mac Wilson, but does that really win you games in the long term? I don't think so. I just I'm taking a look at this, man. Do you really expect me to look at this and be like, oh, the Patriots, they're going to win 8, 9 games next year? No, there's no way. And what I really don't like about this is that whoever you draft, whether it's Jaden Daniels or Drake May or you trade down and it's Bo Nix or Penix, I think whoever goes to the Patriots will be in the worst situation of any rookie quarterback. I believe that wholeheartedly unless they sit for a year, which they'll probably have to do. Because if they get thrown into the Patriots fire, they're going to crumble and burn, unfortunately. And I just hate the fact that the Patriots didn't make any moves to improve the situation for their new quarterback. I think that's really irresponsible. So because of that, I have to give the Patriots a C minus. Um, honestly, in hindsight, I might give this a D plus because I just as I talk about it, I just they didn't do anything to improve their roster significantly. And as one of the worst rosters, that's impressive. Impressively bad, that is. If all I have to do is compare them to the Commanders and Panthers. They did so much work to the Commanders to improve their front seven, the Panthers to improve their offense, and then you got the Patriots just standing pat. They're content with winning 4 games next season. It feels like this makes me upset. I'm not even a Patriots fan in any way, but it's like, man, they just don't care. Like, what's going on here? So here's the AFC East. Dolphins, Patriots, and Bills. Well, Dolphins and Bills getting worse overall. Bills getting significantly worse, and the Jets going all in. Right now, I have to look at the Jets as the favorites to win the division, but unfortunately, there's so many injury concerns with Aaron Rodgers, Mike Williams, Trent Brown, Breece Hall, or so not Trent Brown, sorry, Tyron Smith, Breece Hall. So many guys where if any of them go down, it really hinders their chances. But if they stay relatively healthy, I am thinking that they're going to win the division. Next up, AFC South, starting off with the Titans. The Titans made a lot of very good moves. This top 6 here is all dangerous. Look at the guys they lost. Let's just compare it. Sean Murphy Bunting, he walks out the door. He was a starter. As a result, you bring in Chidobe Awuzie from the Bengals. Awuzie had a very, very good season in 2022, but it was cut short due to injury. And last season, he was not very good. But they're hoping he bounces back. I do not like the idea of giving him a 3-year deal when his previous season was so bad, but we'll get into that more. You lose Azeez Al-Shaair to the Texans. That one hurts. He was very good for them last season. I would have liked for them to bring him back, but instead you bring in Kenneth Murray from the Chargers. I like that move. He's younger, I believe, than Al-Shaair, so you get younger and cheaper with that move. I like that. Derrick Henry leaves to the Ravens. I would have liked for them to bring him back, but you probably do get significantly cheaper. I'm assuming Derrick Henry took a bit of a pay cut for the Ravens. So let's say to return to the Titans, he would have wanted like 12 million a year. So rather than paying Derrick Henry 3 years, 36 million, let's say, you pay Tony Pollard 3 years, 24 million. I think that's a better move for the Titans in the long haul. So I like that move. Losing Danico Autry really hurts because he led the Titans in sacks last season. He goes to a division rival, and you don't bring anything in to replace him. So that's the biggest negative I have with the Titans offseason, letting Danico Autry walk in free agency. You lose Aaron Brewer. He wasn't really that good for them. You bring in Lloyd Cushenberry from the Broncos as a result. You pay him a lot of money, and this drastically improves the Titans O-line, which has been struggling for years. So I really like this move on the offensive line. Andre Dillard sucked. There's no qualms with losing him. Kristen Fulton, you lose him, and as a result, you trade for an All-Pro, L'Jarius Sneed. Possibly had the best season of any cornerback last season, including the playoffs. So that was an amazing trade for the Titans, a great pickup. And you also bring in a receiver in Calvin Ridley. So in this move, a lot of moving parts here. You hurt a division rival in the Jaguars. You give Will Levis another deep threat, and you improve this receiver core, which did need some help. But I do think this is a significant overpay. In no world do I think Calvin Ridley is worth, what is that? That's like 23. That's $23 million a season. There's no way. Absolutely no way he's worth that much money. That's a big overpay. He has not done much for like 3 years now. But I understand you needed help at receiver, but I think that is a big overpay. Looking at more in depth at these guys' stats, that you can see right there, Awuzie in coverage was not good last season. He gave up a very, very bad passer rating. Tony Pollard played all 17 games, was all like fumbled 3 times. He actually had a worse season than 2022, even though he had more touches, which is interesting. But it makes sense when he's not used to. He's not. I don't like how the Cowboys use Tony Pollard. I think they did not get him in space enough. I think they made him run in between the tackles too often. I would have liked to see them get Pollard in space. I think they misused him a little bit. Calvin Ridley, look, man, Ridley played a lot of games and he got a lot of targets to only have 1,000 yards. There were some Jaguars fans that were pretty happy that they didn't re-sign Ridley. So take that for what you will. Like I said, Cushionberry, probably their best straight up signing out of anybody. He was good for the Broncos, and it's a massive upgrade over Aaron Brewer. Kenneth Murray, not as good as Al-Shaair, but he's younger and he is still a good option at linebacker. I like Kenneth Murray as a player. And then L'Jarius Sneed, what more needs to be said? Arguably won the Chiefs the Super Bowl with that forced fumble in the AFC Championship game. All pro, amazing passer rating allowed, 14 PPUs. He's a great player. It's an amazing trade by the Titans, and I don't mind them giving him a big payday right after the trade. So I give the Titans an A minus. There were a couple nitpicks. I don't like letting Danico Autry walk for nothing. I think uh, the Calvin Ridley signing was a big overpay. So those are a couple of things kind of hindering them, in my opinion. But overall, they improved this roster drastically. Okay, so keep that in mind. I think the Titans kind of made themselves players here in the AFC South. Next up, though, the Texans. I'm gonna call it what it is. This is the best offseason in the NFL. This is the best free agency period any team has had so far. Where do I start? Let's start with the losses, right? They lost both their defensive tackles, both of their linebackers, their best pass rusher. Jonathan Grenard was better than Will Anderson last season. Keep that in mind. They're starting running back and a couple guys on their offensive line. Okay. Now, what did they bring in? Jeff Okudah gets really overlooked. He was a starting boundary corner last season in the NFL. And let me tell you right now, Jeff Okudah was better than a lot of big name corners, but he still gets hated on for some reason. I just showed you Chidobe Awuzie's stats and coverage last season. Jeff Okudah was miles better than that. But for some reason, people think that he's not as good as some of these other guys, right? A lot of vets in the NFL were not good last year. Jeff Okudah was. To get him as a starting corner outside Derek Stingley for only $6 million, that's a really good pickup, right? And it's a really slept on pickup. By the way, little fun fact for you. Jeff Okudah and Derek Stingley, I believe, are the only two corners in NFL history to get drafted number 3 overall, and now they're teammates. I think that's pretty cool. Joe Mixon, an amazing acquisition. The Bengals were going to just let him go. The Texans said, no, we don't want anybody else to risk signing him in free agency. Give him to us for like a 6th-round pick, whatever it was, and they extend him immediately. This is big. Devin Singletary was good for them. Joe Mixon's a Pro Bowl caliber player. And with the Texans, I think Joe Mixon could turn into now the best version we've ever seen from him, which is scary to think about. He's back close to home. Well, I don't know where he's from actually, but he played in Oklahoma. Houston's pretty close to that. He's back down in the South. I think Joe Mixon is prime now for some monster seasons in Houston. Danielle Hunter and Danico Autry. I'll talk about these guys together. They basically traded Danielle Hunter from the Vikings for Jonathan Grenard. They got the better player. They got the much better player. Danielle Hunter is one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. He's been doing it consistently for so long, and they paid him the big bucks because he deserves it, right? They know what this guy can do for their defense. Danico Autry had over 11 sacks last season. So their pass rushers, I'm almost stuttering here, their pass rushers now include Danielle Hunter, Danico Autry, and Will Anderson. I don't think I could name a single other team that has a big 3 like that. The Texans might have the best. Azeez Al-Shaair, you take him away from the division rival. He had a great season last season. It's an upgrade over Blake Cashman and Denzel Perryman. Stephon Diggs, man, the Texans, it doesn't stop. It's great move after great move after great move. Stephon Diggs for a 2025 second-round pick. The Texans already had a good receiving core. I don't think they needed to pick anybody up in a free agency, and they traded for a Hall of Famer. Stephon Diggs was amazing in Buffalo, statistically speaking. And as long as he doesn't bring any of that baggage with him, and I don't think he will. I think Stephon Diggs just wants to win. I think he's going to love it in Houston. I think he will need to make an adjustment. He will not be getting as many targets as he did in Buffalo. He needs to be okay with that. But with the talent around him now and the opportunities for him, we could see his yards per catch go up by a lot, if you want to put it like that. We could see like Minnesota type numbers in terms of yards per catch. So I'm looking forward to seeing him for the Texans. And then you got a couple depth pickups as well. Let's take a look at the stats here. Jeff Okuda, 0 touchdowns allowed, 94.6 rating allowed. I mean, I'm sorry to kind of bring this up. Let's just take a look at some of these other guys, right? Let's go to Dante Jackson. The Steelers picked him up. The Steelers gave up a lot to get Dante Jackson. His coverage stats, 107 rating allowed. Let's go to Chidobe Awuzie. Titans picked him up. A lot of people are calling that a good pickup. Oh, he had a 113.5 rating allowed, and it's Kendall Fuller for the Dolphins. He had 9 touchdowns allowed. So for some reason, people are just not comfortable calling Jeff Okudah a good quarterback. He is. He's a really good cornerback. He had 0 touchdowns allowed. He's not top tier. He's not the best, but the Texans aren't asking him to be a CB1. He's a really good young CB2. I love this pickup for them. Joe Mixon, over 1,400 total yards, by the way. Look, 0 fumbles last 2 seasons with hundreds and hundreds of touches. I like that. I love that. He had great stats last season, even better than Derrick Henry. Danielle Hunter, the last 2 seasons, he hasn't missed. I love these acquisitions. Danielle Hunter has not missed a game the last 2 years. He has 27 sacks, 35 TFLs, 44. Look at the tackles as a edge rusher, an outside linebacker. Danico Autry, look at the stats. 11 and a half sacks, didn't miss a game. Aziz Al-Shaair didn't miss a game. Look at oh man, I'm about to bust. Pause. But man, these numbers for all these guys they picked up are incredible. I can't stress enough how good of an offseason the Texans just had. Man, Stephon Diggs had a down year. He had nearly 1,200 yards, over 100 catches. Oh, man. Aziz Al-Shaair, one of the better linebackers in football last year. They took 2 guys away from the division rival, the Titans. Took 2 of their best defensive players from them. Weakened the Bengals, took their running back. Weakened the Bills, took their receiver. Like, man. The Texans just made themselves, in my opinion, the best roster in the AFC. Better than the Chiefs. Better roster than the Chiefs. I say that confidently. The Chiefs do not have the weapons the Texans have, not even close. Not even close. Man, Texans are scary, man. Texans are very, very scary. Moving on, the Jaguars. Jaguars went big. Jaguars made a few moves that tell me that they are pushing forward while a couple of their other AFC rivals are moving backwards. But they also made some moves I don't really understand. Notably, the worst move that the Jaguars have made this offseason is straight up cutting Darius Williams. I don't understand this at all. Darius Williams had an excellent season last year. Excellent. Darius Williams, in my opinion, was a top tier cornerback, possibly even an all-pro level. And the Jaguars cut him. I don't understand it whatsoever. The only justification I was seeing from Jaguars fans, most of them were completely outraged, but the only justification I was seeing was that he was on the other side of 30. That doesn't mean a damn thing to me. A damn thing. Stephon Gilmore has put up multiple very good seasons on the other age of 30. Cutting a guy just because he gets past a certain age when he's still producing at a high level is so stupid to me. Darius Williams is one of the best corners in football, and now you have a hole at cornerback that you created yourself. It's ridiculous to me. I hate this move by the Jaguars, but nonetheless, they cut him. They let Ridley walk, which is smart. You don't want to overpay for a guy like Ridley, who I think was a little overrated last year. Rayshawn Jenkins, you lose him. You pick up Darnell Savage. Okay. You lose Fatukasi. Oh, here's the thing. So let me get this straight. You cut Darius Williams because he's getting up there in age, even though he's performing greatly. You don't want to pay him a lot, even though he was already on the roster. But Eric Armstead is on the other side of 30. He has injury concerns, which Darius Williams did not have. He's not producing nearly at the level that Darius Williams is at, but they have no problem giving Eric Armstead $17 million a year. That's an overpay, in my opinion. I don't really think they needed a guy like Eric Armstead. Don't get me wrong. They'll probably be better with him than without him. But you're telling me you have no problem paying Eric Armstead $50 million, but you cut Darius Williams just because he's like 31. That is retarded, in my opinion. Pardon my language, but man, that is an awful decision. Jaguars, Gabe Davis, 13 mil a year. It's a slight overpay, but if Gabe Davis takes a step forward, if he gets more looks in Jacksonville, he might be a fringe 1,000 yard guy. The Jaguars don't really have a number one receiver right now, but I don't think they need it. Gabe Davis, Christian Kirk could both possibly be fringe 1,000 yard guys. Evan Ingram is a fringe 1,000 yard guy. They have a lot of good players. Zay Jones as well. Throw him in the mix. So I don't think the Jaguars necessarily need a number one receiver because they got a lot of weapons. Mitch Morse, I like this signing a lot to improve the interior of that offensive line. Get him from the Bills, pay him not a lot of money either. Uh, Mac Jones, solid backup, one of the better backups in the NFL right now. So that's a good acquisition, I guess. Couple depth pieces, I guess. You're replacing Darius Williams with Ronald Darby. Yikes. Take a look at some of these stats right here. Oh, fuck, I forgot to include Mitch Morse's PFF stats. That is a mistake on my part. Let me look up Mitch Morse's PFF stats now for you. Forgot to include that. Nobody's perfect. Give me 1 second. And just for comparison, so we can compare him to somebody, we'll go to Lloyd Cushenberry. Since I had his stats pulled up, they both play center. Mitch Morse. He had a 72.8 pass grade and a 62.0 run grade, 64 overall. So not as good as a guy like Lloyd Cushenberry, but still a solid center overall. Probably an upgrade over what they had, and I like that signing a lot by the Jaguars. So I could bring that up for you there. Gabe Davis, like I said, I think he could take a step up in production. Darnell Savage, this wasn't that good of a signing, honestly. Darnell Savage, for some reason, has not been as good the last 2 years as he was his first couple years in the league. Not that good in coverage. I'm assuming he's going to play nickel corner for them, and I don't really love that. I don't think Darnell Savage is that good. And Eric Armstead, $17 million a year for that guy. Okay. If he stays healthy, I guess, then maybe it's a good player for you. I give the Jaguars a B. Couple signings I really was just scratching my head at, but a couple additions that I did like overall. So I think they might be better overall. So I got to give them credit for that. The Colts didn't do anything. Uh, So they replaced Gardner Minshew with Joe Flacco. That's pretty good. You let Zach Moss walk. Okay. Uh, you re-signed Taylor last season, so I guess that was inevitable. Didn't want to pay Zach Moss $3 million a season or whatever the Bengals paid him. Okay, whatever. Their big addition, Raekwon Davis. They re-signed that like everybody the Colts did. This is Raekwon Davis stats for you. I give the Colts a B minus. I don't. Every other team, right? Every other team in the AFC South improved. Texans and Titans improved significantly, right? So the Colts, they didn't even make the playoffs last season. And you're just assuming that AR is going to come in and what get you what? Bring it to 12 wins, 11 wins? I don't see that. They might be worse next season because they stayed stagnant. They didn't sign anybody that improves their roster. Like what's his name? Raekwon Davis might be their third best defensive tackle next season for all I know. So the Colts are just staying pat, not doing much. In hindsight, I might give this as they didn't get worse, right? But not doing anything while your competitors are all improving is not good, in my opinion. I really don't like that. They have some draft picks, that they can improve in that way, but I don't like this offseason at all. I'm gonna change this from a B minus to a C plus actually. Same with the Patriots. Patriots and the Colts go down by 1 grade each. Here's AFC South overall. Texans and Titans made a lot of great moves. Jaguars hate the Darius Williams decision, but they still improved their roster. But Texans, best offseason out of anybody. Now to the AFC West, last division. Raiders, they also made some moves and I'm kind of scratching my head at. I'm not sure if the Gardner Minshew signing means they won't draft a quarterback. I'm assuming it means they won't draft one in the first round, but I would love to see them draft Bo Nix or Penix if they fell in the second round. Christian Wilkins is their big signing, right? He's the guy that they broke the bank to get, and I like that. I think now with Max Crosby, uh, Tyree Wilson, Christian Wilkins, Malcolm Kuntz, that defensive line's looking dangerous, very dangerous. Christian Wilkins is now the best player that Max Crosby's ever played with, I think. So the Raiders, they did their work there. They improved that defense overall just with that one signing. But I don't like the lack of volume from the Raiders, especially when you're losing guys. Amik Robertson now makes that hole in the secondary even larger. Uh, Bilal Nichols, Jerry Tillery, you got Christian Wilkins. That doesn't really matter. You lose Elamanur and DJ Fluker though on the offensive line. So secondary and offensive line is a big concern for the Raiders right now. I feel like. Um, I just I just don't like the lack of aggression, I guess you could say. They got a quarterback and a massive defensive tackle, but besides that, not a lot. I would have liked to see a lot more depth moves the Raiders, at least just to try and just stop the bleeding. I've said that a lot, but you lose multiple offensive linemen, a starting cornerback, and they don't do anything to replace it. I guess that's what the draft's for, but man, they don't have that many draft picks. Christian Wilkins is a great player. I'm not going to say anything. Oh, man. I talked about it in the draft video I recently did, how good Christian Wilkins is. And he's really good, man. I would probably consider him in that second tier, right below the all pros in the defensive tackles, but he's so good, man. I love him and pause, but I love him as a player, and he deserved to get the bag from the Raiders. He should improve that defensive line significantly. Gardner Minshew, you know, it's a massive upgrade over what they had last season. If they, if they just roll with Gardner Minshew, he should be able to take them to the playoffs with like a 10-win season. So I like that move. And Alexander Madison, he's not that good. So it is what it is. They need to do something at running back in the draft, I think. Give him a C plus. It's kind of like the Ravens, I really like the big move they made, Christian Wilkins, Derrick Henry, but they got a lot of holes that they still have to fill. Chargers, man. Chargers. One of the worst. One of the worst, man. They got in Jim Harbaugh and purged their roster of talent. I don't even know where to start here. So let's start with the defense, then go to the offense. So defensively, you lose your two starting linebackers, both of which played very well for your last season. Eric Kendricks and Kenneth Murray, both were good, and you let them both walk in free agency. You don't bring either of them back. Michael Davis, 2 seasons ago was very good. Last season was not good. So you let him walk. Maybe that's not that bad of a decision. You replace him with Kristen Fulton. I'll call that a wash. You bring in Denzel Perryman. He's a downgrade over Kenneth Murray and Eric Kendricks, but I guess you kind of stop the, patch a hole there. Maybe you spend a second round pick on a linebacker. Maybe you spend a third round pick on a guy like Junior Colson or something. I don't know. Or is it Junior Colson? I think it is. Uh, Offensively, though, let's talk about this. So you have a young quarterback who is still on there. I believe, is Justin Herbert still on his rookie contract? I think it's been 4 years, right? 4 or 5 years. I believe Justin Herbert is still on his rookie contract, which means the Chargers have the opportunity to build a loaded roster around him while he is not hurting their cap space too much. And what they do instead is purge their roster of talent because you get rid of Austin Eckler, Gerald Everett, Mike Williams. They keep in mind, they did not have to get rid of Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, and they got rid of both of them. They gave away Keenan Allen for a fourth round pick. He was an all pro caliber player last year. Keenan Allen was one of the best receivers in football. He damn near had a career year last season. He was amazing. Mike Williams, you cut him. I know he has injury concerns, but man, you think you're just better off without him? Austin Eckler, he led the league in touchdowns back-to-back seasons. Yeah, he probably fell off a little bit last season. Gus Edwards to replace him, that's a pretty good signing. I'll give you that. That's probably the best signing they made. But man, oh man, I do not like the Chargers offseason at all. Looking at the guys they brought in. Like I said, Gus Edwards, pretty good signing. 13 touchdowns last season, almost 1,000 yards. I think they got to do something in the draft at running back, maybe in the second or third round. But Gus Edwards is a good start. Denzel Perryman, like I said, he's not as good as a Kenneth Murray or Eric Kendricks. Bradley Bozeman, he's not graded very highly. You want a guy with a 48.9 pass grade protecting Justin Herbert? I mean, knock yourselves out. Kristen Fulton, his passer rating allowed very low. I don't like these moves at all. Are the Chargers rebuilding? Because that's what this offseason tells me. This offseason tells me that the Chargers, rather than going all in to build a roster around Justin Herbert that can compete, they're taking a step back. The Chargers are going to wait till Justin Herbert's making $50 million a season to then try and put talent around him. They're going to give away their all pro caliber receiver for nothing just because. Like that's one of the worst moves in the entire offseason. Giving away Keenan Allen for nothing when you didn't even have to give him up. I would have rather given up Joey Bosa before I give up Keenan Allen. Got some goddamn headset died again. I would rather give up Joey Bosa before I trade away Keenan Allen. And now the Chargers offense is looking pathetic. Quentin Johnson is your best receiver. You have Hayden Hurst and Will Dissly at tight end. Their offense is looking awful. I don't know what they're going to do. They have to spend their number 5 pick on either Malik Neighbors or Brock Bowers. They're going to have a lot of their plate as a rookie. I can tell you that much. Yeah, the Chargers, horrible offseason, man. Horrible. Moving on to the Chiefs. They didn't do much in terms of acquisition. Marquise Brown is a very, very good addition. He should be their wide receiver one, especially since Rashee Rice is an idiot. He's a fool. I'm not going to count that against the Chiefs in terms of their offseason grade. Let's talk about what they lost. MVS, I don't mind getting rid of him. Nick Algiretti is a depth piece, no harm there. Willie Gay, it probably hurts losing him. He was a good player for them. Mike Edwards, he was a role player, so they didn't really lose much. All 4 of these guys, I'm okay with them just losing to other teams. L'Jarius Sneed, I understand that the Chiefs have a lot of talented players that need to get paid a lot of money, but L'Jarius Sneed is an All-Pro. L'Jarius Sneed helped you win a Super Bowl massively, and I understand that Chris Jones, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes all got to get paid before probably you pay L'Jarius Sneed. But when you have an All-Pro, you got to find a way to pay him, man. Trent McDuffie is not L'Jarius Sneed. He's not close to L'Jarius Sneed, man. And to give him away for a 3rd-round pick, that's not enough. I'm sorry. If anybody trades any type of Pro Bowler or All-Pro, for a 3rd-round pick, it's a bad trade. You get worse significantly in that secondary. And I got some Chiefs fans talking about our cornerback room is deep. I don't care how deep they are. None of them are L'Jarius Sneed. None of them. So the Chiefs are going to feel that move significant when they're getting burnt by receivers. When Trent McDuffie's getting cooked next season, they're going to really, really wish that they had L'Jarius Sneed out there. So that hurts them a lot. Looking at Hollywood Brown, he struggled the last 2 seasons because Kyler's been hurt. His best season was with MVP Lamar, I believe. Or was it MVP Lamar? I'm not sure. But he had 1,000 yards once. Hopefully, the Chiefs need him to get back to that. The Chiefs need to draft receiver. Maybe they actually need to draft corner now. I don't know what the Chiefs do. Maybe you draft corner with your first, but I don't know. I don't know what the Chiefs do with their 1st-round pick now. Is it corner or wide receiver? I'm not sure. Probably wide receiver, depending on who's available. But yeah, I'm gonna give the Chiefs a C-. I really, really, really don't like that L'Jarius Sneed trade. I would resign him. I don't care how much it costs. You make moves around L'Jarius Sneed. You get rid of a lot of other guys before you get rid of L'Jarius Sneed. You know what I'm saying? So that was a bad move, man. I give the Chiefs a C- overall. Next up, we got the Broncos. The Broncos are the worst run organization in the NFL right now. Sean Payton's a big part of that. I've heard some Broncos fans that are okay with what's going on right now. I don't really get that. They're okay with entering a total rebuild, right? Because they're going to look for a quarterback in this draft. I don't know who it is. It could be McCarthy, Penix, or Bo Nix. Take your pick.
and whoever they draft is coming into a bad situation, right? Because you just took your offensive line just got worse because you lost Lloyd Cushenberry. Your receiving core just got worse because you traded away Jerry Jeudy when you didn't have to. Your defense got significantly worse because you cut an All-Pro in Justin Simmons and you let Josie Jewell walk. Um, the Broncos are okay with being one of the worst teams in the NFL next season. That's what this offseason tells me, and their fans are okay. Well, let me not say this. Some of their fans are okay with this. Everybody should be upset with their management and their coaching and what's going on, but some fans are trying to justify it. I don't understand that. Um, these are their signings, right? None of these guys really make much of a difference. Josh Reynolds might just be a solid wide receiver 3, depending on how Tim Patrick comes back. I'm not going to expect Tim Patrick to do much because 2 season-ending injuries back to back, 2 straight seasons without a game played. I cannot expect Tim Patrick to come back and save this offense, right? So they have a bad receiving core. Their secondary on their defense now, outside of Surtain, is very questionable. Brandon Jones, it's a solid pickup. Maybe as a starter now, he is going to be a good player. Who knows? Besides that, man, Cody Barton's not good. As a Seahawks fan, don't trust the counting stats there. He cannot cover anybody. But man, I got to give the Broncos a D plus because whether or not cutting Russ is the right decision, I feel like it's something that had to happen. It was inevitable, I guess. But the Broncos are entering a full rebuild, but they're not acquiring assets. They're just crippling themselves. I guess they're just comfortable tanking. Maybe they don't draft a quarterback. Maybe they just wait for whoever's coming out next season. Maybe they just tank for the #1 pick. I don't know. But the Broncos are moving backwards, but maybe not even as far as the Chargers, though. It's a rate. This is the worst offseason for any division because the Broncos are mentally unwell and the Chargers are content with being a 6-win team next season, I guess. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what any of these teams are doing. The Raiders are the only team which I can confidently say at least might get better based off their acquisitions this offseason. Everybody else I feel like got worse. So I don't know, man. It's rough. Here's the entire conference, though. The Texans, the Jets, the Steelers are going all in. The Titans improved significantly. The Bengals and Jaguars did okay jobs at patching up their losses. The Browns are still top contenders, which still found ways to improve their team overall. The Dolphins found ways to patch up all of the losses that they had this offseason. The Colts, I'm gonna give a C plus. They didn't do anything. The Raiders made 2 big moves, nothing else besides that. The Ravens had a lot of losses. They will get worse, but at least they got King Henry. The Chiefs lost L'Jarius Sneed, got Hollywood Brown. Patriots, give them a D plus. I don't like what they're doing. They will suck next season. The Broncos, they will suck next season. The Bills and the Chargers. The Bills and the Chargers have young stud quarterbacks, and they are intentionally crippling their offenses next season. I don't get it. I have no idea why you would trade away Stephon Diggs and Keenan Allen when they are the favorite targets of your young quarterbacks. But I'm not a GM. They know more than me, I guess. So that's it for this video, man. My mic died twice. My phone died, so the lighting's fucked up. But I hope you guys enjoyed that. My fucking hair is a mess. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Stay tuned. I got a lot of videos coming out. The draft time is coming around. So this is where from the next 6 to 7 weeks, I'm going to be pumping out at least 3 videos a week. That's the goal. So subscribe if you want to be a part of that. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.
It's out the motherfucking pack. Right out. But niggas don't know how to act.